but I never picked up or saw any like passage highlighting Harry Potter
No,
references.
that's fucking retarded.
Hey
Wait,
guys, welcome back to this next episode of the Glass Candle Podcast, where we look at what is, what could be, and what will come to pass in A Song of Ice and Fire. I'm Eric.
and I'm Lillian, and we admin over at the A Song of Ice and Fire / Game of Thrones Discussions and Theories Facebook group.
And we are going back to our normal chapter format and the episode breakdowns return to us discussing and answering the following questions. All right, so Lillian's going to give us a quick chapter summary. We're going to discuss who the main character of the chapter was. We'll figure out who held the biggest influence over the POV character and why. We'll talk about any alternative actions that that character could have done. Knowing how the future plays out, how does
What
shit.
could the character
what could
have
the
done
POV
differently?
character have done differently?
You
I
wrote
got
these
tossed
points. These are your talking points.
Yep. I got tossed up on my order. Then we jump to see how the events and actions of this chapter affect the other plots moving forward. We'll pick and discuss an alternative POV to see the events of the chapter through, and then we'll close out with quotes, standout appearances, and then theories. Joining us today is our fellow admin in the group. It's Brett. What's up, Brett?
Hello.
All right. So, we haven't done this before, and this is not a re-recording. Let's go forward with our high-level summary of A Clash of Kings Prologue, Maester Crescent.
Oh my goodness. Okay. So the chapter opens with Maester Crescent contemplating the meeting of the Red Comet. He's interrupted by Princess Shireen and her full patch face, who's creepy as fuck. She's come to see the White Raven and complain about her dragon dreams. We're given Patchface's backstory on how Stefan Baratheon found him in Volantis, and he was the sole survivor of a shipwreck. Crescent leaves once he is told Davos is back. He runs into Davos on his way to Stannis and is told of Renly's claim and of the Lords refusing to join Stannis. We're also given Davos's backstory on his former life as a smuggler and how he saved Stannis and his garrison from starving to death during the siege of Storm's End. Yes, it's finally time to meet the one true king, and he's a fucking dick. He complains about Robert's treatment of him, Renly's claim, and how the Stormlords should be joining him. He's nearly swayed by Crescent to marry Shireen off for an alliance with the Arryns when Selyse shuts it down. Queen Selyse has been won over by the Lady Melisandre of Ashai and counsels that Stannis only needs the Lord of Light on his side to win. Stannis dismisses Crescent, and he returns to his chambers. He decides he must rid Stannis of the Red Woman and retrieves the poison, the Strangler, from his stores. No one wakes Crescent for the feast that night, and it's super sad. Crescent finally makes his way to the Great Hall and is knocked over by Patchface. Mel helps him up and crowns him with Patchface's antlered helm. Crescent realizes he does not have a place at the high table and is told he is being relieved of his duties. He still has his mission, though, and must find a way to get to Mel. Davos offers him his seat, and Crescent uses his wine cup to poison Mel. He suggests a toast to R'hllor, and Mel even gives him an out, but he refuses. She drinks most of the wine, and Crescent drinks what little remains. The chapter closes with Mel standing over Crescent as he dies. Did I miss anything?
Nothing plot heavy, just a lot of character introductions in there, but we'll jump into all of that a little bit later. Or I guess in our very next point, more or less. All right, so that takes us into who is the main character of this chapter. So Brett, what do you think?
I guess the main character is Stannis because he's the center of this character arc, or the section of the story that's being introduced in this prologue. So I'll say Stannis.
Lillian, what do you say?
I have Maester Crescent as the main character because the chapter focuses around him and his desire to protect Stannis.
I had Crescent, but really I think it's an extended introduction of all the people and characters that are in Stannis' camp. It kind of jumps around, so between Crescent, Stannis, Mel, Shireen, Solis, Patchface, Davos, they kind of all get an equal amount of time almost. So I wouldn't say there really is a one main focus character, but a lot of smaller main characters. And the castle itself is also introduced, and there's a lot of stuff that stands out to makes it's almost its own thing. But as far as plot heavy points, a lot of it does revolve around Stannis, because obviously that's what everyone there is for Stannis. Lil, go ahead and take us into the next point.
Okay, so the biggest influence over the POV character, I had Stannis and Mel, like you said, everybody is there for Stannis. The chapter basically revolves around Stannis. And I feel like him and Melisandre had the biggest influence over Crescent because of Crescent's love for Stannis. That was why he needed to get rid of Melisandre. And Melisandre affected Crescent because he was worried that she was detrimental to his son by proxy. I'm not even sure if I'm wording that correctly, but he sees Stannis as a son.
Kinda.
You know?
Yeah. Brett, what about you?
I would say the biggest influence is Melisandre. He shows a lot of love for Shireen and for Stannis, but most of the conflict is because of Melisandre.
Yeah, I'm leaning more towards Brett's side there. I think the main influence is Mel, but the main focus or the struggle between the two of them is Stannis. So it's kind of like a combination of what both you guys said. So everything that Crescent's doing is to sway and advise and convince Stannis on like how best he should move forward. But the problem between that is Melisandre. So he's got to deal with what Mel is doing so he can get through to Stannis. So it's kind of like they're both got their influence over him in this. Well, this is his only chapter, I guess. So they do have a certain amount of sway over him, but it's kind of like you got to deal with one to get through to the other. Because at this point, Stannis is almost full into Mel, right?
I don't know if I would say that. Like, Solis totally is, but has he bought into it yet? I feel like he doesn't until Renly and Balon and all of them start dying.
I feel like it's not that he's more bought into Mel, it's just that he doesn't really have any alternatives at this time. He hasn't really made Davos his main advisor yet.
Right, so this is kind of like a starting off point, and I guess he does get deeper into Melisandre's side whenever they start burning and all that other stuff.
But once he gets deep inside Melisandre too.
Yeah,
Sorry, I'm a child.
Alright, so the next one up is knowing how the future plays out, what could the character have done differently to avoid that result? So Brett, go ahead and take us into this one, yeah?
I think that Crescent could have chose a different way to advise Stannis. Like, there's not a lot in his situation, but he knows Stannis better than almost anyone. So I feel like there's a way he could have got through to him, and without maybe not demonizing Melisandre so much, but maybe convince Stannis to not go all in on her ways because it can alienate Westerosi and hurt his cause. Like some kind of argument like that.
Yeah, this was one that we didn't have trouble with on our first recording because this is our first one. But yeah, there's not really a whole lot that Crescent can do, right? And even then, he's like doing what you said. If he would like try to balance out like what Mel is saying, like he'd always be on the back foot to be like, yeah, she said this, but you also got to think about this. So that might be his best option, but it's still like it's not a great option. I don't know what he could have done. I had a bad answer. I said not murder her, but again, that just leaves us nowhere. Lillian, what do you say?
Yeah, mine was contacting the Starks and the Aarons behind Stannis' back to try to preemptively forge some type of alliance, but we know that Stannis doesn't appreciate moves like that, obviously by the way the Florent guy is treated later on.
Yeah, that wouldn't have. I don't think that had done a whole lot for him. He'd have been dead either way, I guess.
Any way we play this, Cressen's dying.
He doesn't die in Brett's way.
I'm sure Mel would have gotten rid of him.
No, she seems dismissive of him. Not so much like, I have to kill this person.
It's possible to have escalated no matter what, as long as Melisandre was there with them.
Yeah, and she's
Right.
adamant that, whatever the Citadel teaches the Maesters isn't enough information or could be bullshit. So I'm sure they would have butted heads enough to the point where it would have happened eventually. Something would have gone down between the two of them.
Yeah, it doesn't seem entirely unavoidable, and much like they are now, where they're kind of clashing behind the scenes, at least, or at least in Crescent's mind, like they're definitely not seeing eye to eye. So yeah, Crescent was kind of just screwed on that front. All right, so how do the events in this chapter affect the other plots moving forward? So this one doesn't really set a whole lot in motion with the other sides. It's mostly just to set up Stannis' political dispositions to the main players and groups that we see in the first book. So it explains why he didn't, or why he's not rushing to help the Starks, why he's hesitant to join the Arryns. We kind of know his disposition toward the Lannisters already. We find out why he doesn't like Renly. So it's more of adding pieces to the board, as it were, and then explaining how this group of people is going to play around with the other people that we had in book one.
I agree with you. It doesn't necessarily affect the other plots. It really just sets up Stannis and reinforcing that there's absolutely no possibility of him siding with anybody. He sees everybody as a usurper, and at the end of the day, he's going to attempt to kill them all, depose of them, whatever he needs to do, because he is the rightful king. He is the one true king, and he sees it no other way.
What do you think, Brett?
Yeah, the only real effect it had is on Stannis' disposition. He's one of the major players, and after this, he no longer has Crescent as an advisor, and he has another reason to be impressed by Melisandre's power. So he swayed a little bit to her side more after this.
I suppose if we want to go down the foreshadowing route, it kind of, or depending on how it all plays out. But Patchface's chanting and stuff around Shireen could be like a deep seed for something that might happen in Winds or Dream. And then maybe a little closer, this could be, I don't want to say a triggering point because it's not, but it could be an early reason or callback or something like that for when Davos decides that he's going to kill Melisandre. Because,
I can agree
parallels
with that.
And shit.
Davos has already seen someone attempt it, and I think even in his chapter when he's contemplating it, if I remember correctly, he thinks of Crescent.
I can't recall, but I imagine he would. But yeah, I mean that's kind of keeping it contained to this set of people, not so much the outside world, as it were. So, yeah, very self-contained. So Brett, go ahead and run us into alternative POV.
The obvious one is everyone wants a Stannis POV, but of course there are good reasons why the author didn't give us Stannis POV. No king. He gave us no kings, but Stannis in particular is one that would be really interesting to have and kept hidden on purpose. I guess a Shireen point of view, I think, would probably be really interesting to me.
Oh yeah.
He gives us the Arya point of views, which are she's probably about the same age as Shireen. It would be interesting to see Shireen's point of view on all of the people in the court because she doesn't really understand the politics of what's going on. So it'd be interesting to see how she sees them all, especially Stannis. I would like to see how she views Stannis.
Yeah, that would be a good contrast with Arya, like you said. Because Arya's in a spot a couple times where she overhears stuff and her internal monologue kind of just fills it in like for herself, and then we kind of got to pick out like what's important. And then when she goes and tells Ned that she overheard Varys and Illyrio, she's tossing in there was monsters and shit, but there's also like grains of truth in there too. So it'd be interesting to see if Shireen like actually overheard anything that could be important in that same kind of sense. Lillian, what do you say?
I would like to see the events through Patchface's eyes. So as we're told, God, I can't even remember which book it is. Fools basically hear everything because nobody takes them seriously. And it would be interesting to see if Patchface, again, just like you said, Shireen, she may have heard things and not put it together. Patchface is always with Shireen, so he could have heard the same things. And maybe we could get some insight into what the fuck his songs mean. And the biggest thing for me is I want to know if he is legit crazy.
He's got to be though, right?
He could be faking it.
He never speaks an ounce of like sense at all ever.
Does he ever say like an actual sentence, or is it always songs or rhymes, riddles, whatever?
I don't think he does at all.
I don't think he does either.
So that'd be 30 pages of nonsense.
I would love it.
Like that the Hodor chapter that's been going around.
God.
It'd be like that, except all kinds of stupid shit about under the sea.
It'd be way better than Hodor.
Well, yeah, it wouldn't take much to be better than the Hodor chapter. Or maybe Hodor's the same way, and like he can only say Hodor, but he's seeing everything, and it's just like a tormented, imprisoned consciousness inside his giant's body where all you can say is Hodor. And it'd be really like sad and like terrifying.
Well, I think that is what he is, isn't it?
Didn't he get kicked in the head by a horse when he was a kid? And he's,
That is allegedly what happens. If we want to take what happened in the show into account, if that's how it's gonna go down, maybe
this is a show podcast.
Maybe that's what it is. Maybe he's just so, not terror. What the fuck is the word? Traumatized. Maybe he's just so traumatized that the only word he can actually say is Hodor, but his internal thoughts could be something else.
I agree with that.
But anyways, we're not talking about him. We're talking about Patchface.
Well, yeah, but the comparison is that Patchface is the same. Where like, there's like some. We mentioned this on our first recording, where I think maybe it's possible that there's a piece of his consciousness alive, like in the back of his mind. Going back to Hodor, like when Bran skin changes him, he says he can feel Hodor just kind of like shrink in the back of his mind and just like huddle in a corner and cry.
Yeah.
So I wonder if Patchface is real, quote unquote, like self and conscious is just like buried in the back of his head and he's possessed or something like that. Not by a spirit or something, but his mind is just completely melted to where he's singing gibberish.
He's broken because
Well, I tried to seize him like just like Hodor, and that's pretty spooky if you think about it.
Who tried to seize him?
It just if he's similar to Hodor, that would mean that something like Bran tried to seize him.
Oh, okay.
That's just spooky to think about.
Yeah, and hasn't ever let go.
Maybe there's a mermaid in there or something.
I don't think that's one we can credit to Bloodraven, though.
Oh, God.
Yeah, not even I would go that far.
That's saying something. Yeah, no, that's an interesting thought. if Patchface is being skin changed by something or another. I don't know. The dude's already creepy enough.
I think it'd be more like he came into contact with something and it damaged his mind. That's what my guess would be.
I
So
agree
it's,
with that.
Right, the Lovecraftian stuff.
yeah, so it's kind of similar to Hodor, but not exactly.
Oh, that's right. We talked about that. The
What
story
what
I can't
the
read.
thing?
Night
The
something
word?
tip. Right?
Nyarlathotep.
Yeah, that thing. People's minds get broken because they see so much fucked up shit. You know, Patchface is broken after being raped by the mermaids and whatever the hell else is down there. He
It's a
just can't deal
subversion
with
of
it.
the mermaid legend.
I think he
Yeah,
got raped by mermaids.
something like that.
It's Ariel with a dick.
Hey, don't bring Disney into this.
Fair enough. I got a link I gotta send you later after the show.
Oh, great.
So for my alternative POV, getting back on track, I picked Davos. I think we get similar character interactions and introductions through Davos, like we do with Crescent. We'd be able to meet Shireen, Crescent himself, Stannis definitely. We'd get a little cameo from Selyse. He'd probably think about Melisandre. I don't know if he'd interact with her, but he'd definitely see her at the feast. He might talk to some of the other Florents that are in high positions, maybe Salah Rasan. I think Davos would give us a similar introduction to everybody, and yeah, maybe we might get a reasonable onions and shit into Storm's End, because I don't think we ever get a reason for why he did it.
Nope.
Because he was a pirate, and just one day he's like, I'm gonna do an extremely dangerous thing and be a good guy now.
Yeah,
I don't know if it would necessarily be a good guy. He probably saw that there would be a large amount of profit in it.
Well, yeah, I guess he was doing it with the rebels, so he's like a Han Solo type person.
Oh,
I've
God.
always think that he already knew Stannis before that, and he was kind of doing that for him. And then but of course that opens the question of how did they meet in the first place?
Huh.
I've always pictured Davos being like 7 to 10 years older than Stannis.
Not in the fan art. They look
Oh yeah,
relatively the same. Except for Stannis is bald.
well, yeah, but Stannis is still 35 years old ish.
He was like really young when he held Storm's End.
He was
Davos
17 or 18.
already, I guess, retired from smuggling, so you'd think Davos would be quite a bit older.
So Davos might be like 50 now. How many kids? Doesn't he have like 7 kids?
He's got a bit.
Yeah, so that's probably about right.
Yeah, because what's his face is squiring for Stannis if he's old enough to squire. Yeah, I guess so. Late
Evan.
40s.
Yeah,
Maybe.
I don't know. I don't know how would. I guess at that point Stannis is 17, 18 ish. Davos would be late 20s
Probably.
or around early 30s. I don't know how we would know Stannis. I mean, it could be. I don't know.
Maybe that's a story we'll find out later.
Maybe, hopefully.
I doubt it.
All right, so our next one is quotes from the chapter. So,
So
Brett,
many
you got
quotes.
a couple? I didn't go through and add some. I forgot that this was one of our shorter bits. Brett, go ahead and take us into a couple of quotes that stood out to you.
I've got 3. 2 of them are to point out things that I think don't get much discussion, but here's a part that is just really cool quote. It's when Crescent wakes up and he's going to the feast to confront Melisandre. It says, "A night wind whispered through the great windows, sharp with the smell of the sea. Torches flickered along the walls of Dragonstone, and in the camp beyond, he could see hundreds of cook fires burning, as if a field of stars had fallen to the earth. Above, the comet blazed red and malevolent. I'm too old and wise to fear such things," the maester told himself. The doors to the great hall were set in the mouth of a stone dragon. And then a few lines later, Crescent stepped deep. Crescent stepped down into the dragon's maw. So there's a lot of interesting imagery here you could delve deep into. But in general, it's really cool how this foreshadows the danger that's happening, and it's cool that the fire and dragon stuff is associated with the actual danger that he's facing, which is Melisandre, and it kind of harkens to like a knight having the courage to fight the dragon, but the dragon is Melisandre, and then he's a knight of the mind, which is, I think, a term that he actually uses, or maybe Lewin uses that, but yeah, I think it is Lewin, but anyway, you know what I mean. I thought that passage is really cool, and of course it mentions the comet and falling stars, and you can delve deep into that in many ways with the LML stuff.
Yeah, going with what you said with the kind of the way it's all described with the malevolent comet and Crescent. I almost said Lewin. Crescent stepping into the dragon's maw. It definitely sets this tone of foreboding. We know what he's trying to plan to do, but it's not like his method isn't entirely revealed until like he actually does it, as far as poisoning Mel and drinking the poison himself. But like his whole descent into there, it's like building up this air of suspense, and like he's not like it's not going to be a good outcome as he's walking into that chamber there.
Yeah, that's one of the passages that stood out to me the most in this chapter.
Stacking on top of it too, like most of the feasts and stuff like that we've seen in the previous book, and really with a lot of this book and the coming ones too, like there's always loud noises, everybody's laughing and drinking and like having a good time, and apparently at Stannis's parties, no one's allowed to talk or laugh very loudly. So when he comes in, it's almost like a hushed crowd noises, you know, and that kind of just adds to that air of foreboding, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so I got mine on page 16 to 17, and this one's describing Stannis' opinion of Ned. He says, "Why should I avenge Eddard Stark? The man was nothing to me. Oh, Robert loved him, to be sure. Loved him as a brother. How often did I hear that? I was his brother, not Ned Stark, but you never would have known it by the way he treated me. I held Storm's End for him, watching good men starve, while Mace Tyrell and Paxter Redwyn feasted within sight of my walls. Did Robert thank me? No. He thanked Stark for lifting the siege when we were down to rats and radishes. I built a fleet at Robert's command, took Dragonstone in his name. Did he take my hand and say, 'Well done, brother, whatever should I do without you?' No. He blamed me for letting Willem Darry steal away Viserys and the Babe, as if I could have stopped it. I sat on his council for 15 years, helping Jon Arryn rule his realm, while Robert drank and whored. But when Jon died, did my brother name me his hand? No, he went galloping off to his dear friend Ned Stark and offered him the honor. A small good it did either of them." So this quote, like, really defines a lot of Stannis' character, how he's bitter at what happened to him in the past, honors and like awards and accolades that he feels he should have been given, based on his hard work with holding Storm's End and then taking Dragonstone and building the fleet and all that other stuff, and how he constantly feels slighted and underappreciated. In this quote by Robert, and it comes up many times over and over again with, and this, it changes focus from Robert to the people in Westeros in general, how he feels like they don't appreciate him. And it really becomes like the turning point in Stannis' arc. After he loses Blackwater, he realizes that instead of feeling like the people owe him, he needs to make himself worthy of the people. So his sentiment with this little monologue that he just did is a driving force behind Stannis for most of this book and up and through Storm until he decides to shift gears. So, stood out to me. It's a good quote.
I'm trying to remember, was that the part where we talked about Stannis receiving the letters?
Yeah, I mean, we can talk about it here. So, I believe it was sent around because Cersei finds a letter on one of Ned's slain guardsmen, and that's the one that she kind of tosses around and says, "We know what you tried to do," and all this other stuff. And then we were debating like why Stannis didn't come to Ned or accept his stuff.
Well, whether Stannis, like why he felt so negatively, and was jealous towards Ned, and we were debating whether or not the initial letters ever came to him and if someone intercepted them, because the first couple letters would have been about calling him back to court and asking about Jon Arryn, and Stannis could have potentially blown them off, whatever.
Right, if it was like willful negligence, or if he didn't actually get those last couple letters saying, "Hey, I figured everything out," right?
Mm-hmm.
Because if we assume that the letters that Cersei took had the bastardy involved in it, then Stannis wouldn't have known that Ned figured it out. Everything else would have been just, "Hey, I'm the Hand. You need to come back to King's Landing." And I can see how Stannis would be like, "Fuck this."
Yeah.
Based on this, it's a position. It's like, you need to come here, and Stannis probably saw it as the Hand giving him an order instead of Ned Stark asking for help. So.
Stannis knew about the incest, so if the author decided that someone intercepted the letters from Stannis, then the only real reason for that would be to affect the relationship between Stannis and Ned. And maybe that would make Stannis more bitter because he wouldn't realize that Ned supported him and tried to call him in to take the throne.
Right.
Okay, so one of my quotes is on page 11, and Davos is letting Crescent know about Renly and his Rainbow Guard, and Crescent's thinking about Renly back when he was a little boy. Renly had loved bright colors and rich fabrics, and he had loved games as well. "Look at me," he would shout as he ran laughing through the halls of Storm's End. "Look at me, I'm a dragon," or "Look at me, I'm a wizard," or "Look at me, I'm the rain god." And now it's "Look at me, I'm a king." It probably shows that Renly wants to play it king rather than really rule. He wants it for the attention. Yeah, he just wants the attention.
I got a response to that. Tough to judge a boy jumping around, using his imagination and just playing around saying he's a dragon, to judge his motives as a 20-something-year-old claimant to the throne.
You agreed with me last time.
What are you talking about? This is our first recording. But no, like, you can take what any of these people said, except for Stannis, because Stannis was a grouch even when he was 8 years old. But anyone else, you can't take what they said when they were playing make-believe or some shit and be like, "This is why he shouldn't be a king." It's like, well, no shit. Like, they were a child. They didn't know what they were talking about. Jon wanted to be Aemon the Dragon Knight. It's like, idiot. This guy definitely shouldn't be Lord Commander. You know?
Okay, but Renly is flamboyant, for lack of better words, and he says that he should be king because the people don't love Stannis and whatever else. Like, we are never told anything about what Renly's policies would have been, what he would have done for the people. Like, we know nothing.
Right, what's his tax policy?
Exactly, and that's what I care about.
No, Renly would be a terrible king, and yeah, he only wants to do it for the parties.
Well, then why the fuck are you arguing with me?
Referencing him playing around when he's 8 years old is not a good thing to back it up.
I think Crescent's opinion is backed up by Catelyn Stark when she goes to Renly's camp. She also sees it as very immature. It's almost the exact same response. And then Donald Noy, however you say his name, Donald Noy, he kind of says the same thing about Renly. He says that he's bright and shiny, but not worth much at the end of the day.
Yeah, he's the shiny copper, right?
But Noy's wrong about Stannis, so how much... Like, he's right about Robert, he's wrong about Stannis. So then we're just going to assume he's right about Renly?
Yes. maybe that is a perfect explanation of him, because Stannis has changed quite a bit, especially after Blackwater.
Right.
I
And
don't
of course,
understand.
Robert is not really the true Steel anymore like he was when he was younger.
That's true.
I don't know. Renly's army did some serious damage to whatever was left of Stannis' host at Blackwater anyway, so Catelyn's assessment, I think, is wrong too.
Seriously?
Yeah, and like half of the Stormlanders in Renly's army nearly took King's Landing.
Yeah, no, I agree with that, but I'm talking about with Kat's assessment of Renly. You think she's wrong?
Well, his army, like she was always like, these are green boys
Green
and Knights of
boys.
Summer.
Yeah.
They suck at fighting. When that's entirely wrong. They do not suck at fighting.
And it's more like their attitude is immature and they don't really understand what's going on. They're just like basically going to a tourney, pretty much.
Exactly. They don't know what they're getting themselves into.
Yeah, well, they got good results.
Besides, she's a stupid woman. What does she know?
Oh, shut up.
See, look, I defended her. Can you believe I defended her?
Reinforce the fact that Reachman and the Tyrells do know how to fight, and the line from the show about that did not really make sense.
Yeah.
But
Our
we don't,
sigil was a rose, so obviously.
Oh, God.
Uh,
Okay, yeah. Who wants to go next with a quote?
okay, so this is kind of a short one. Whenever, I think it's one of the first times that Melisandre speaks when Crescent comes into the hall. It says that her deep voice flavored with the music of the Jade Sea. And I think it's interesting to point out that she's from Ashai and she has an accent that is flavored with the music of the Jade Sea. The Jade Sea is around UT, and it's heavily based on East Asia. So it's interesting that Ashai would have the same accent because they're pretty far from each other, and they seem to be relatively different culturally, and that has an impact on potentially on Melisandre's past, but also it has an impact on theories people are coming up with about the Great Empire of the Dawn and whether it included Ashai and other parts in that region, and the accent of the Jade Sea being in Ashai supports the fact that they were part of the same empire at one point. And there's a lot of stuff you can go into on that, but it's a pretty interesting element. Also, it could be that Melisandre was originally from somewhere around UT, though her appearance doesn't really match that. Personally, I think that she's the daughter of Bloodraven and Shira Seastar, and she was sold into slavery in the Red Priests, but, that's a whole nother topic, but yeah, the accent thing's pretty interesting. We even talked about before that Melisandre could even be Asian looking.
No. No.
yeah,
No.
I'm on that train.
No. No.
Straight anime girl, waifu type person. Couple of things there, Brett. So I've almost accepted Ashai as part of the Great Empire of the Dawn as like fact and canon, so it's hard for me to think of it outside of there. Just regionally, all those areas being relatively close together, and with Ashai being so huge, it's the biggest city in the known world, more or less, right? And the fact that everyone talks about it still being dead, more or less, lends its way behind being part of the Great Empire of the Dawn. So there's a lot there that I don't even consider that it wasn't a part of it. But a couple things. Oh, go ahead.
It would make sense if Ashai was like the Bloodstone Emperor city. Maybe he's the one that built it or made it his capital or whatever. Because obviously it fits with the dark magic and all that, but also there's a strong parallel with Harren the Black and Harrenhal with the Bloodstone Emperor. And that goes all the way down to Euron, but if Harrenhal is pretty similar to Ashai, so if the Bloodstone Emperor built Ashai or made it his capital or whatever, that's a pretty strong parallel with Harren the Black.
I want to go back to Mel because I don't think she's Asian. I think she's just an albino that dyes her hair red.
I do too.
Like
Oh,
we
I never
aren't.
thought of that.
I think we're told she has like a heart-shaped face, and like that's about it. I don't know. Have we met anybody in the books from UT?
No.
I don't believe so.
Okay, but we know in general that it's kind of based off of East Asian things. So that's why I always claim I'm from UT. But yeah, I just have a hard time picturing it with her being Asian-esque, I guess. But then, so I know there's the theory that she's Bloodraven's daughter, which you buy into, Brett, right?
Yes, definitely.
Bloodraven and Shiera?
Yeah.
And Shiera's mother was from Lys, right?
Serenai, however you say it, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And Lys is one of the free cities. So, like, would she be, so if she was half Asian or Yitish, whatever you want to call it, that would make Mel a quarter. I am half Chinese and I barely have any Asian characteristics, but as a child that is a quarter, I guess could, I don't know, whatever.
I think if she was Bloodraven and Shira's daughter, she would not be Asian at all. She would just have the accent because that's where she grew up.
So if she's Bloodraven, wait, I'll save this
Hold
for
on.
theories.
I'm not.
Okay.
Bloodraven is an albino, so his only kid is also an albino too. That's some high probability right there.
True, but I mean, if he wanted, he can do what he wants to do with the probabilities and stuff to make it.
He chose to make her an albino.
If it's like 1 in a million,
Uh,
might be it, but I mean, it's not. It's not that far off to have his kid be an albino.
I just don't understand. So if she were his daughter, like how did she end up on the auction block as a
Well,
child?
we
I
don't know
have a theory.
what happened to Shira, but she went to Essos, and then
She gave up her daughter?
yeah, she could have fallen on hard times or died, and she may have
My
had contact with Bittersteel while she was over there, or maybe she's just totally on her own and had no way to take care of herself.
No, Bittersteel would have saved her, so that didn't happen.
my theory is that if this just falls in line if Mel is Bloodraven's daughter, um, by Shira, was that Shira was somehow chased off or fled Bloodraven because she was like, oh, this guy's gross and disgusting and evil. Um, so she ran away to find Bittersteel. Um, but on the way, she was probably she wouldn't have ended up in Volantis. But she probably died in childbirth, and then like someone just like stole the baby and like tossed it into the Red Priest Club.
Tossed it in.
You know, as one does, and then like that makes sense why Mel is over there. Because if Bloodraven and Shira like was like a romantic thing, like it makes no sense for them to be like, sure, let's sell our daughter into slavery, and don't worry, in like 40 years I'll start contacting her through weird fire images and it'll be okay. It doesn't make any sense. So the fact that Mel is abandoned by Shira doesn't make sense either. So Shira had to die, and then the fact that they were on the or that they or she wound up in Essos doesn't lead me to believe it was a healthy home life. And since Shira was never mentioned ever again, aside from they both liked her, Bloodraven and Aegor, and like that was it. I think it means that Shira ran away.
I think Bloodraven has been messing around with the bloodline, all kinds of stuff about that, like for using a modern term, genetic experiments, and maybe him choosing to have a daughter with Shira was part of that, and that could have been the reason why she fled because Bloodraven was treating her child as an experiment. Like
I
he was
I'll
trying
agree
to,
with that.
like he wanted to see if she had strong enough magic blood to do whatever it needed, hatch dragons or whatever.
I
I
think maybe it's
agree with
giving
you. Oh, go ahead, Eric.
I was just gonna say I think it's given Bloodraven a bit too much credit. Um, I think he was still tinkering around with bloodlines um, back when he was like putting Aegon up, and I think this is a little early for him to have it all figured out.
I'm with Eric.
He can tell for himself that when because of his parentage, he had a bunch of powers. Maybe he wanted to try to have a kid with a certain other bloodline to try to make a kid that had, certain powers or whatever.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know.
But I do agree that in this scenario, in this theory, that she's Bloodraven's daughter, Bloodraven is probably the reason that Shira fled, and it's not like part of some kind of conspiracy that they brought her over there.
Right. I don't think in any theory that Shira and Bloodraven were like happy, and they're just like, let's do a 100-year master plan here. I don't think Quaithe is Shira, or if she is Shira, then I don't think she's like Team Bloodraven too.
Yeah.
I think it's clear that she is seeing Bloodraven in her visions, or at least it's led us to believe that it's Bloodraven in her visions.
Yeah.
You're talking about the vision with Bran and the tree?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It could be just misdirection to be like, this all looks like Bloodraven, but it's actually the person Bloodraven is trying to battle. So, yeah. I don't know.
Nah, Bloodraven did.
I can see it being pulled, or by Bloodraven, I mean the children. The side that Bloodraven
Whatever
is
on. Operating his...
Right.
What's left of him.
The thing that's in his head pulling the controls, like, Meat House Man.
So about the Asian thing, I have a theory that you've probably seen about the Ironborn being descended from the Great Empire of the Dawn and the Bloodstone Emperor. And someone made a comment on it at some point saying that this supports your theory. This picture of Asha looks Asian. I think that the Ironborn would be descended from UT people. And the art really does look kind of Asian, but it's just fan art.
Is it the one where she's like squatting down with the onion?
Yeah, I think so.
I've seen her facial features. I can see that, but it's fucking fan art, like you just said. Oh my goodness!
I gotta start reimagining Theon as an Asian guy, and I mean, I have lots of sources. I watch a lot of anime, so I can just start inserting everybody. Euron is someone from JoJo's.
I don't know if I want to be Ironborn. I just throw myself in wherever there's Asian people, obviously. So, yeah.
I mean, they're Vikings, but they don't necessarily look exactly like Vikings.
Are they fucking Asian Vikings?
Maybe.
Oh my god. Did the Mongolians have ships? Like, that's the closest thing I could think of.
Yeah, they tried to invade Japan, right? Or is that just Total War fanfic? I thought they did, right? They tried to invade Japan.
I think so.
I don't know.
I doubt it'd be that much of a stretch, and I don't think Total War would just decide to come up with a whole expansion based on the Mongol invasion. But yeah, no. So the Mongols probably had ships.
All right, so we're just gonna make everybody Asian, and I can just be everybody in the story.
Sure, just make the whole thing anime. That'd be great.
Sure.
Okay, let's go back to quotes.
Hold on, I got more stuff about Mel with her accent and stuff.
Oh, okay.
So, we don't know where she was born or who her parents are, definitely. She was sold in Volantis, was trained in Ashai, and probably went back to Volantis and then went to Dragonstone?
Well, we don't know if they can go... Would that be farther east, and it would reach Westeros, so you would assume she would eventually see Volantis.
I thought she was sent to Dragonstone from Volantis, or came to Dragonstone via Volantis.
I don't remember. But I'm just saying, if she was going from Ashai over to Westeros, like, it's in the path. It's on the way.
True. No, so I'm just wanting to call into question her accent from the Jade Sea. So it's odd that she has an accent from there if she was raised and trained in the Relorism in Volantis and then also went to Ashai to do shadow bending stuff. So it's just weird that she kept the accent from there, which she probably didn't go to a shy until she was a little bit older, like in her teens, I imagine. Like you probably wouldn't send a 12-year-old to go study shadow binding, right?
Maybe.
I don't know how those people work. So I don't, it's just weird that she has that accent. So maybe she was originally from somewhere over there in the Yeetish Jade Sea area, and then wound up in Atlantis. I don't know. I think that was my last bit.
More quotes? I have one more. I'm sure you guys have some more.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I'll do mine. This is something else that's a little detail that I think doesn't get enough discussion. Shireen comes to Mr. Crescent at the beginning of the chapter, and she says, I had bad dreams about the dragons. They were coming to eat me. And Crescent explains that the dragons in Dragonstone are just carved by the Valyrians, and they're just gargoyles and they're made of stone. But Shireen is unconvinced. She says, what about the thing in the sky? Dala and Matrice were talking by the well, and Dala said she heard the Red Woman tell Mother that it was dragon's breath. If the dragons are breathing, doesn't that mean they are coming to life? So, I wanted to point that out mostly because it's pretty definitive that Shireen has dragon dreams, and that's not something I see talked about a lot. Like, there's the minor character, Talon character in the Winds of Winter preview chapter, Ariane, that has dragon dreams, and I've seen people talk about that a lot, probably because it came out more recently.
It's a lot more random too.
There's a lot of people theorizing about Sweet Robin, and I think there's some merit to that, but it's based on loose, bits of stuff going on. Morse is famous for that. He's a big Sweet Robin fan. But no one ever seems to mention the fact that Shireen has dragon dreams. And also her father Stannis can see things in the flames. And everyone seems to forget that. Like, that seems like kind of a big deal to me. And it's interesting that they have Targaryen blood a few generations back, so that explains it, but it's interesting that it's manifesting. It seems to me like most of the children in Westeros that have magic blood or dragon blood or whatever are having these dreams at this time. Like, it's a shared phenomenon. That's what it seems like to me.
It's got to be from the comet, though, right? But we don't know how long Shireen's been having these dreams, right?
Right, but the Talon girl talks about her dreams after the comet's long past, so.
Yeah, true.
But there's definitely some kind of connection, or there seems to be.
I wonder if Mel's presence around Stannis and Shireen has something to do with them seeing and dreaming more stuff. I don't know how, but maybe. I don't know.
At the Crofters village, Stannis is standing on top of the tower for hours on end staring into the fire. And I've always wondered if maybe he doesn't see anything like he used to for some reason. And maybe it's because Melisandre's not there with him. That's possible.
Shireen having dragon dreams too. That's well, for one, she might have read a Game of Thrones before anyway, so she knows what happens there at the end. But it does seem to signify that some kind of dragon-related person or thing is gonna be the thing that eats her, or dragon or fire-related. You can almost call it like extreme, deep-seated foreshadowing with her being burned, or it could be something to do later on. Like, I don't think Dany's gonna come to Westeros and wins unless it's like at the very, very end. And even then, like, her chance meeting up with Shireen seems one of the smallest of possibilities to begin with. So I don't know how much weight Dany burning up Shireen to hatch dragon eggs would have to do anything, but it's a thought.
I think that the dragon blood manifests more strongly in females, especially the dreams and visions and stuff. And maybe that's why this Talon girl and Shireen are having these dreams, even though Shireen's dragon blood is like 4 or 5 generations back, and the Talon girl, we have no clue. So, and of course, if Melisandre is Bloodraven's daughter. She's really powerful, so
That is the only time I would like for her to be Bloodraven's daughter, just for it to mean that Mel is going to be the one to burn her.
yeah, it's pretty interesting. And of course, the scales on her face are reminiscent of a dragon too,
Oh, yeah.
or the dragon eggs, which are like stone scales. They have scales on them. I mean,
That is kind of weird. Like, why would an egg have scales?
It's fantasy, Lillian.
It's just weird.
Maybe Shireen goes nuts and decides to drink wildfire because she's like, I'm the dragon that's gonna hatch from stone.
Okay.
well, the high,
Shireen is Azor Ahai.
the high number of Targaryens that had dreams that did that, it's very much possible.
I think it was mostly dudes though, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, that's true. I think it's all only males that have done that.
But Dany did walk into the fire, presumably because of her dragon dream, so maybe Shireen will burn herself. I doubt
True.
it, but yeah.
Well, I mean, going with what we talked about this on our awards, or no, with Matt about the dragon hatching recipe. If Shireen is having visions of this stuff, then whether it's Dany or not, like a lot of people theorize there's a clutch of dragon eggs at the wall or at Winterfell or something like that. If Mel finds these eggs and then she's like, "Oh, cool, we just got to burn somebody to release them," because Daddy sent me a fire message. Like that could lead into or be a factor into Shireen's burning.
Yes, and also, I'm of the opinion that king's blood doesn't actually mean anything, but magic blood does. And
Yeah.
that's, from generations past, they have these rituals that they do or whatever, and they think that king's blood does it, but it's actually magic blood because, nobles and kings are the ones that end up getting this magic in their blood. Like, for example, the Starks conquered the Ward King and took his daughters, and so they have a skin changer gene. So that could make Shireen's dragon dreams relevant because she has magic blood. So even if Melisandre thinks that she's burning her for her king's blood, it could actually work because she has magic blood. And someone like Edric Storm wouldn't. Well, maybe
Yeah.
he doesn't have Targaryen blood. Well, yeah, he would.
Oh, yeah, he kind of does.
He does through Robert, yeah.
But it'd be very diluted at this point.
Yeah, but she didn't actually burn him, so.
But yeah, that'll fuck Melisandre all up if this one time it works and she's like, "See, I told everybody, King's blood."
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. There's a lot to unpack with Shireen, and I'm stupid, so I don't have a whole lot of smart things to do except for read off other people's better ideas on the internet. But Brett's one of those smart people that can think of stuff on his own, so we're glad to have you on here.
Oh, let's plug Brett's page because we didn't even do that last time. We said he had a WordPress, but we didn't give the address
Yeah.
to it. Do you want to do that, Brett? Or it's up to you if you feel comfortable sharing it.
Ours is the Fury site. .wordpress.com. That's SITE. Ours is the Fury site. And it's just a WordPress that has all my theories and stuff on it. And some general discussions and analysis.
And this is all stuff that you've pulled yourself. Like I'm sure you use references from other people too, but you've also have a lot of your own touch in there, right?
Right.
Yeah, so that's some original stuff out there for you guys. Don't know how many people have noticed that or seen it, because I don't think you've plugged it into the Facebook group a whole lot recently, have you?
It's been a while.
Yeah, we've gotten a lot of new people coming over, so give Brett's page a look.
Probably my most original and maybe biggest one is the theory about the Ironborn, like I mentioned, being from the Great Empire of the Dawn. And also I found some stuff on Azor Ahai and R'hllor with connections to Lovecraft references that I haven't seen anyone else find yet, so that's probably the ones that I would be most proud of, or think
All right.
are the most, at least tinfoily.
So the Ironborn are Asians is Brett's theory.
Kinda, sorta.
I had one more quote about the painted table, and it was 50 feet long, and I forgot about that. And it's a lot bigger than the one that we see on the show. I didn't write the page number down because it was just something passing. But yes, the painted table is 50 feet long. It's pretty big. Sure didn't do it justice. That's all my quotes. You guys got anything more?
So, one of my favorite quotes from the entire book series is on page 21. And it's Crescent after he's went and gotten the Strangler, and he's thinking about how it's made, and he says, "All the world knew that a maester forged his silver link when he learned the art of healing, but the world preferred to forget that men who knew how to heal also knew how to kill." And I really like it because it introduces the thought that maesters aren't genuinely, or maesters aren't necessarily the good guys, basically, and can do what they want.
I wouldn't say they're not good guys, but they're part of this society, cult even. You can use the word cult. That has been systematically trying to take over Westeros by putting a trained and skilled assassin inside every single castle next to a lord to be like their number 2 advisor. That controls information and what the leader of that castle knows and doesn't know.
Yeah, I have a more positive view on the Maesters than a lot of people. But I do acknowledge the very strong theory that about the Maester conspiracy, especially them starting Robert's Rebellion. Not really starting, but setting it up, I guess.
Right. Inceptioning everybody to do stuff.
Basically setting up marriage alliances so that the Targaryens would have a bunch of lords against them when war did start. They also potentially played a role in the downfall of the dragons.
Yes.
Yeah, between them and the Septons, I think that was the thing. But firsthand, we get stuff like in this actual series. For one, with Lewin, John didn't tell Benj, or he might have told. I forget how the actual order of events go. But Lewin doesn't. Brett, do you know what I'm talking about? He said John talked to Benjen, talked to him about going to the wall.
Yeah.
Something like that.
It's one of the first chapters of Game of Thrones.
Right.
He tells Ned that Benjen told him that John should go to the wall, but Benjen, I think he told John that he didn't want him to go there.
Yeah, he was against it.
So
he wanted John to wait a couple years.
So he lied to get John sent to the wall.
Yes, basically.
Right. So
not that we're agreeing with certain channels who went off on that. Just saying.
No idea what you're talking about.
Okay.
I assume it's Order of the Green Hand stuff. Because you're always quick to shoot down any time we're similar to them.
It's the Catelyn Sucks series.
Oh, that Catelyn had a hand in it too? Yeah. Whatever. It was all Lewin and the Maesters. And Lewin is a good guy. Not like a good guy versus a bad guy, but like he is a good person. And he was probably doing it out of, like, because he knows what John is and all this other stuff. But
Marwyn says they let Aemon rot at the wall because of his blood.
Right.
And Lewin lied to get John sent to the wall. So that really supports the idea that Lewin knew John's bloodline.
Right.
He could have just poisoned John when he was a baby or whatever, but instead he sends him somewhere where he's relatively safe, but he doesn't have any kind of claim, so he can't cause any problems with his bloodline.
Right.
But if the Maesters are so anti-Targ, he should have just killed him, right?
Right, but he's also an innocent child, so...
Right, that's what I'm saying. Like, Lewin's not a bad guy. Like, he just is still operating with the Maester interest, just without killing him. Because I don't think a whole lot of the other like the Citadel doesn't know who John is, and Lewin might have told. It's possible that he might have told somebody else, but the realm of knowledge about who John is and who the parents are is still very contained. So Lewin was just doing the kid a solid.
Yeah, I think there are plenty of Maesters that would not care to have John killed off. so I don't see Lewin telling anyone about it.
Another instance where the Maesters are controlling information is, and this comes later. I think it's in Clash. It's Pylos. I could be wrong about it being Pylos, but it's one of the letters that gets sent to Stannis.
It is Pylos.
And okay, so he reads it about the others and stuff, and he's just like meh, and he just puts it away without telling Stannis, or something along those lines. We haven't got to that chapter yet, so it's not entirely fresh in my head.
It's in Storm, and then Davos gets it as part of his learning to read plot line, and that's how Stannis gets convinced to go to the wall.
Right. So, and you can kind of toss it aside as the Maester, being like, this is trivial and stupid, but it's also written from the Lord Commander at the wall, and it's probably something that should have passed to Stannis, and this guy made the decision to not even inform Stannis at all, and that just kind of like feeds into my whole idea of them having information control and they're deciding and dictating who knows what. And then Duran's Maester, he doesn't let him read his mail either. So Duran is suspicious of the people too.
Yeah, there's a lot of good examples of,
and even with the
of that.
Yeah, when he sends Ariane off, he doesn't even like. It makes sense to not send like the Maester, but he sends a guy who's not even like chained at all. It's just a dude who's good with feather or good with the birds. So.
Have you guys heard about the Ratatosker thing?
The what?
Oh, I don't know what that is.
Oh, it's just a little thing, since we're talking about the Maesters, in Ragnarok, which has a lot of, George Martin took a lot of things from Norse mythology.
The movie? The Thor movie?
No.
Norse mythology.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
The Ratatosker is a tricky squirrel thing. It's gray, and it's either a squirrel or a rat. And on the Wikipedia page, it actually refers to it as a gray rat. And it scurries up and down the world tree, bringing messages between Nithog, the dragon who's at the base of the tree, and I don't remember its name. It's in some kind of eagle or something. And the Ratatosker gives them the wrong messages to make them fight each other.
I like it.
That's perfect.
And of course, Nithog is like obviously very similar to Bloodraven, but you could look at it in more broad terms and like say that the Maesters gave false messages between Jon Arryn and his side and the dragon side, Targaryen side, to cause a war. Or just in more broad terms, you could just say they're playing the role of giving false messages to turn people against each other.
I dig it.
Yeah.
100% true.
You should write that up, Brett. Or at least just post about it in the group. That's really good.
I've seen people try to make tons of one-to-one connections between Ragnarok and Song of Ice and Fire. I don't think that's the right way to do it, but in that particular case, it really fits. I really think that he took the idea from that.
Yeah, that's the fact that they're called gray rats in both scenarios. Wikipedia, fair enough, but the fact that gray rats is actually used by a character in A Song of Ice and Fire, that's a strong connection. And then also with all the similarities with their information control and whatnot, so cool. I don't even think this is a theory anymore.
No, I think that's pretty straightforward.
Nice. Good one, Brett.
The eagle, it's not an eagle, it's a hawk. It's called Vedderfalnir. And, the squirrel called Ratatosker runs up and down the ash tree Yggdrasil, telling slanderous gossip and Nithog.
Slanderous gossip. Yeah.
Go read about it. It's pretty cool.
Lillian, you got any more quotes?
Yeah, I have one more set of quotes. So it's on 20 and 25. So it's Crescent thinking about the boys. When a maester donned his collar, he put aside the hope of children, yet Crescent had oft felt a father nonetheless. Robert, Stannis, Renly, 3 sons he had raised after the angry sea claimed Lord Stephen. And then on 25, Stannis, my lord, my sad, sullen boy, son I never had, you must not do this. Don't you know how I have cared for you, lived for you, loved you despite all? Yes, loved you, better than Robert even, or Renly, for you were the one unloved, the one who needed me most. And it just makes me sad. But we've already talked about how Stannis is basically, you know, Crescent's son by proxy. He truly cared for him and was the motivation on why he did what he did throughout this chapter.
Stannis calls him old man. So that's kind of what people call their dad sometimes.
I've never called my dad that.
Yeah, me neither. But it's a thing.
Okay, and we can revisit those quotes when we get to theories, because it lends to some other stuff. So.
Yeah, we got a whole slew of patch-based quotes that we're going to get into. But for now, we're going to jump over to standout appearances. So there's a ton of characters that make their first appearance in this chapter, and to me at least, I'm a through and through Standard man. So all of them stood out to me. Stan, Davos, Shireen. It's our introduction to them. It's our first impressions that we get from them, which likely like sets our expectations and our own opinions and dispositions toward these characters moving forward. And Dragonstone itself, Brett's already dropped a couple of quotes about the gargoyles and the Dragon's Maw being the entrance to the big banquet hall and everything like that. So everything really comes to life in this chapter. It gets enough of a flesh out for an introduction to where these characters, like you know that they're going to appear again later. Selyse is probably the thinnest one, but even her, or even she has a strong recurring role, like in almost every single one of Davos' chapters going up that he's around her, or anytime Stannis is around at the wall in Jon's POV, Selyse has a noticeable presence at the very least. So all these characters really stand out to me. Stannis has to be the biggest impression, just because he's the guy that we've heard about in the last book, the one that Ned Stark got arrested for declaring king, and we see him here. We see how he has this reputation that we heard about in the first book, and yeah, Stan's the man. What do you guys got?
So the Stannis part of the story is also my favorite part. I love a lot of the characters in it and settings and everything. Stannis is my favorite character too. But if I was looking at this from like the first time I read it, the most standout character would definitely be Melisandre. Especially because there hasn't been a lot of supernatural stuff going on in the story yet. And she just brings so much dread, and she really makes the reader dislike Stannis at the beginning. She's like, well, later you can see her like the devil on his shoulder with Davos as the angel. But I think she definitely has the biggest impact on the reader the first time around.
She definitely closes the chapter pretty strong, with her drinking poison and not dying, and you're just like, what the fuck is going on here? So yeah, Mel definitely, yeah, rightfully stands out more than Stannis, because Stannis doesn't drink poison and live. Lillian, who's yours?
Yeah, I agree with both of you. Those were the ones I had written down, Dragonstone and Mel. And I remember the dragons at Dragonstone, kind of in my head envisioning them like I don't even remember what they were, if they were knights or what they were at Hogwarts, but the stone guys that came down to protect Hogwarts. And it just makes me think if the stone dragons can do the same at Dragonstone.
I don't think they do.
Melisandre thinks she can make them up, so...
A bit off topic here, but I heard people say that there's been Harry Potter references in A Song of Ice and Fire.
What?
And I must have missed them, because, like, I know he plants small nuggets here and there. There's Dallas Cowboys and New York Giants references in there, but I never picked up or saw any like passage highlighting Harry Potter references.
No, that's fucking retarded. This whole series started before. No, fuck those people.
It's in Sansa's Winds of Winter preview chapter.
Well, yeah, I know Game of Thrones and Clash and these other ones probably don't have them. But the later.
No, I don't care. I'm saying no. What do you see in Elaine that's related to Hogwarts, Brett?
I think it was in a Preston Jacobs video. I don't remember exactly what it was, but I remember thinking that It looks like a pretty clear reference.
I mean,
I'm
I
a-
wouldn't be that surprised.
I don't like. I like the Harry Potter books. They were like probably my favorite books growing up. But I just think that's fucking
Choose your words
stupid.
carefully.
What?
I thought you were about to shit on Harry Potter.
No, I like Harry Potter. I still have the books on my bookshelf. Like, I'm 31 years old and I still have them. I like the series. But I just, like, I'm okay with George, paying homage to Tolkien and to Lovecraft and going off of certain things within mythology. Cool. And yes, he has stuff for his favorite football team and the team he doesn't like. Cool. I don't see a reason why to anything with Harry Potter. I just think that's weird.
I mean, some people think he's basically rewriting a Lord of the Rings, so.
Yeah, if John ends up Aragon, I'm gonna be pissed off.
Aragorn. There's an R in there. Aragon is something else.
Is the dragon? Whatever. We've done this before.
I mean, it could be an Aragon reference too. Aragon's a dragon riding series, so.
Whatever. You knew what I was saying. Well, now I'm gonna have to go watch those Preston videos because I want to know what the fuck that was.
It wouldn't be the worst thing. And
it-
it's probably something so subtle that you don't even recognize. I had someone like I had to read the Giants and Dallas Cowboys thing before I'm just like, oh, I get it. And that was really funny. So it probably won't be anything that stands out. Like when you read it, you're just like, oh, bullshit.
Yeah, no. I'm not gonna believe it until I just know. No, it's no.
Anyway, what were we talking about?
Those were our standout appearances. So now we can move on to theories.
All right, theories. So there's probably a couple of big ones. We talked about Shireen already. And then the other two would be Patches and how Mel survived the poison, right?
Yep.
Oh, and then the whole thing if Stannis knew about Crescent's assassination attempt.
Which kind of goes with Mel and the poison.
Well, I mean, like, how did Mel... Oh, well, anecdotes, I guess.
It goes with it,
Anyway.
yeah.
You want to lead us into that one, Lillian?
So, obviously, we all know Crescent poisoned Mel, and Mel made it through. So there's a couple different theories. One, Mel is legit and was able to survive it through magic.
Fire cleanses.
Two, which this one I think is more plausible, Crescent falls asleep. He leaves everything out on the table. Pylos is basically his assistant. Probably came in, saw it, put two and two together, knew what was going to happen, and either provided an antidote to Mel or they figured out a way to get around it. I don't even know how that would be possible, but something along those lines. And I think, it's given credence to that with Mel trying to give him an out, telling him it's not too late to pour out the wine. And along with the Pylos reasoning, it leads credence to Stannis knowing what was going to happen and trying to prevent it from happening. Did I get that right, Brett?
Yeah, it's a big discussion we had in the group probably a week or two ago. The fact that the author included the detail of him leaving out the poison and falling asleep has to have some kind of purpose. It leaves the door open for Melisandre to have known about it so she could create an anti-venom or whatever. Or more likely, Palos would have been the one to find it, and it makes sense that he would bring it to Stannis. So, yeah, Stannis knowing about it would change your view on Stannis in this chapter and what he's trying to do.
Mel could have seen it without Pylos, though, because the first thing she sees in her visions is dangers to her own person. So she could have been the one to be like, hey, Pylos, go check this out.
I doubt that.
She would probably interpret it wrong, though.
She's gonna see some little rocks. Like, what the fuck?
Well, she sees it with Davos. That's why Davos gets captured and imprisoned before he's just like, oh, someone betrayed me. And she's like, no, dude.
I think that might have been a lucky guess. She knows that Davos is loyal to Stannis, and Crescent was loyal to Stannis. Kind of like, well, I fucked him over. Someone's gonna come for him.
But she
or
don't know that
comforter.
she don't know that Davos is back yet. At that point,
She didn't?
because he was washed up on the rocks, and then he comes in and he's like, "Gonna go do this shit, right?"
Well, yeah. But that's why he thinks Sala sold him out. So wouldn't she know that he was back and alive?
But Sala didn't sell him out.
I know, but if he was back in the area, anybody could have seen him and notified Stannis's people that, hey, Davos will be here.
Okay, but she says this. You're saying she's lying then?
Yeah, I think she's full of shit and a lot of time.
Right, that she's full of shit, but you think she's lying when she said no one sold him out. So you think Sallador San did sell him out?
No, I'm just saying I think they may have been given advance notice that Davos was alive and coming. Not necessarily that Davos wanted to kill her. I think she made a good assumption on that.
A spot on assumption. Fair enough. Anyway, to this one at least. So she didn't see it in her flames, even though she says that's the first thing she sees. So it was Pilot just walked in the room, saw the poison, and then told everybody. It does make Stan look like he's trying to get Crescent to go away. Whenever you look at it with that in mind.
Yeah, if Stannis knew that Crescent was messing around with really dangerous poisons, he would probably feel like he's kind of old and out of it and dangerous and doesn't want him to hurt himself or someone else. So if he cares about him, it would make sense for him to, retire him instead of like throwing him in the dungeons or something.
Yeah, I can get on board with this whole theory. It makes sense.
But we also have to keep in mind that Stannis fans sometimes tend to whitewash him. He's a complex character that's done a lot of bad things, and sometimes people come up with ideas or change things around to make him look better than he is. So it could be something like that going on.
I mean, Stannis does a bunch of things on his own to make him unlikable without us having to create stuff. I didn't like Stannis until he switched gears and went up north.
Yeah.
I was surprised by it. I watched the show first and I was like, oh, cool. Stannis is in the book now, and I'm just like, this guy sucks. What other theories do we have?
Well, do you think she was saved by the ruby?
No, I think the ruby is just a glamour. I don't think it's an anti-poison glamour.
I think there's something going on that keeps her, warm in the snow and all that. Maybe even prolongs her life. It doesn't seem like a glamour can prolong your life. We don't really know how they work, but there's something going on with her body in that way. So that very same power could easily protect her from poison.
Could it be just some kind of like brainwashing thing that she had whenever she was training to be a Shadowbinder or a priestess? And like her training and stuff just seems so long to make her think that she's older than she is. Because I know she doesn't eat, or she says she doesn't eat. She says she doesn't sleep, but she also has all those powders and stuff. So could she just be like sniffing cocaine and just like really running on chemicals and stuff? I made the joke about cocaine, but like, could she really be not needing to eat? Because that's not human. But she has like a lot of other human traits and qualities. So it doesn't seem like that's a real thing. I don't know. She's a tough thing to figure out.
Well, I've seen people say that the Bene Gesserit from Dune are a inspiration for Melisandre. They are like a female-only, religious-ish organization that manipulates people, and they have training like that to do superhuman things, but it's not really magic. It's like, sci-fi, like training your mind to do like, like monks that can, survive super cold, stuff like that. It's that kind of training. So it's possible that Melisandre has some kind of training like that from a Shire or whatever.
I tend to believe that more than she's 400 years old and she doesn't need to eat anymore. I'm not familiar with it at all, so I don't know. But
It's really the same as monks that can train themselves to do superhuman things.
right.
So maybe she can raise her body temperature and like expel poisons from her body and stuff like that. You never know.
I don't know. Lillian, do you think she's 400 years old?
Well, she says that she's something years. Oh fuck, I can't even remember what it was.
She says she's old as fuck.
She says beyond years beyond count, something like that. That could mean anything. Maybe she's an idiot and doesn't know how to count past 10. Like, I don't know.
She basically admits that she exaggerates in her POV chapter.
Yeah. I exaggerate. I am 400 years old also. And people are like, she says she's 400.
The number 400, if I'm not mistaken, just comes from an interview from the actress.
Mm-hmm.
Right, I'm exaggerating as well. That's just the number that sticks out to me. She could be,
He's more like 100 years old, like Mr. Aemon's age.
if she's Bloodraven's daughter, and Bloodraven is what, 111? Or 107, something like that? He's over 100. So she would be like 70 or 80.
Well, like, Aegon was old enough to be Bloodraven, maybe Bloodraven's grandson, but more like his son. And Aemon's around the same age, so that would make Melisandre at least somewhat close to Aemon's age. So we have proof right there that some kind of supernatural thing can prolong your life at least that long, but we don't have any proof that it can be prolonged 400 years.
Right. I don't know. That's one fallacy that I can't cover with the whole Melisandre's Bloodraven's daughter. She just seems like she's too old without me going or having to believe extraordinary life prolonging magic stuff.
Well, unless she is Bloodraven and Shierra's time traveling fetus, and that's how she ended up being 400 years old.
Okay, that's enough for you.
Well, if she's as old as Aemon, and she's a glamour to look younger, it's not like a crazy stretch.
But she still moves and walks around and has her eyesight and
That's true.
operates like within that human body capacity for a 30, 40, a middle-aged person.
She's a
without any
secret
kind of
Bolton
physical
vampire.
restrictions. Yeah, if Reese is a vampire, why can't she be?
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so Patchface. So Patches has a couple of really creepy lines that he says. His weird singing when he's dancing around, hopping on one foot with his bells tinkling and shit. And we get started early with him. So it's on page 4 of the prologue, where he goes. So he says, under the sea, the birds have scales for feathers. A little bit farther down, on page 6, he says again, it's always summer under the sea. The merwise wear anemones in their hair and weave gowns of silver seaweed. Under the sea, it snows up and the rain is dry as a bone. Okay. Dogs are happy.
I'm sorry.
No worries. So with those two quotes, I think what he's talking about is the downfall of Valyria. So if we go back and look at them again, under the sea, the birds have scales for feathers. I think that's a reference to dragons. Birds have feathers, dragons have scales. Another bit about, he says, it's always summer under the sea. Valyria was around the volcanoes, and it was in a more southern area, like level or south of Dorne, so it has a more tropical kind of climate. So it's always hot and warm there. He says the merwise wear anemones in their hair. And an anemone is a purple kind of flower, and I think that's a reference to their eye color. And then weave gowns of silver seaweed, I think refers to their silver hair. And then it says, under the sea it snows up, and the rain is dry as bone. And I think that's referring the ash from the volcano blast, shooting up in the sky, and then coming down We all know ash is dry, and it was falling like rain. So I think those are all fairly reasonable interpretations of those quotes. I don't know if you guys have anything different on those, if you've seen anything else. These aren't my original ideas. Again, I am not smart. Have you guys heard anything different?
Well, I would have two things to say on it. My personal interpretation would be that this is dealing with the Lovecraftian drowned god stuff. Like I said before, his mind is broken by some kind of contact with some unknowable thing beyond the sea or under the sea. And another thing you could say about Patchface, I believe this is something that LML is about to go into about green imagery and sea imagery. And Patchface has antlers, and antlers are the ‑1 fertility symbol. And he talks about green stuff, and he has green on his face. So it's supposed to be connected to Green Seer somehow. I don't know exactly how, but if you're interested in that, watch LML's blog, and he'll have something about it at some point.
Well, to kind of roll along with that one, Patchface also drops his Shadows Come to Dance, but before that, when Crescent is showing the White Raven to Shireen, Patchface says, "Clever bird, clever man, clever, clever fool." Then he says, clever, clever fool." So it's almost like he's saying, yeah, the bird is smart, the maester is smart, but I am smarter than all of you, and I know more than all of you.
Exactly. He's faking it.
Huh.
He just can't articulate himself.
Well, that's not faking.
Okay, fine.
But yeah, I missed that part whenever I was writing my Patchface quest down, the clever, clever fool. But I think that it is a good indication that his gibberish is not gibberish. We see later, like, he has a ton of red wedding riddles and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Shadows Come to Dance. So he says this following Shireen around. He says it again before Crescent, again before they leave to go Shadow Baby on Renly. And I think he's not singing it. I think he's saying it to a person. And the fact that he's been saying this to Shireen for 5 books is more. Everyone thinks Shireen is going to die anyway. And I think just coming from this book, it's been planned for a very, very long time.
So I do think it's mine sometimes and stuff like that.
Do you think Shadows Come to Dance mean anything else?
There's all kinds of stuff you could come up with that. But he obviously foretold the Red Wedding, so if it was another big event that he's foretelling, it would probably be Renly's murder.
Or Shadows Come to Dance, could that be like the Long Night and the White Walkers coming? White Walkers are referred to as Pale Shadows, so this whole time he's talking about the others.
And it could just be a broad thing, like the old powers are waking. I don't remember who says that. Maybe it's Marwyn. The old powers are waking. Maybe that's the thing he means.
I thought it was Corrin.
Oh yeah, you're right. I think it was Corrin. And that'd be referring to the others and dragons, and even the warlocks are having their magic return. So it's all kinds of stuff going on. Probably the deep ones, hopefully.
Hopefully.
I don't know. Everyone, like, I've seen a lot more stuff on the deep ones come up lately in the last couple months, and when I was reading the series, I never paid them any attention.
I forgot they were actually in the series. Like, I think Brett brought them up one time in the group, and I think it was before we were modded, and he said something about them. And I was like, I thought that was a Lovecraft thing. Like, what the fuck is he talking about?
Well, yeah, they are, right? The fish people thing?
Yeah, it's a direct reference. Their most famous appearance is in Shadows over Innsmouth, where they kind of are interbreeding with the people. And that's what the
Squishers, right?
Yeah, they're also called Squishers. And the people in the Sisters seem to be a reference to Shadows over Innsmouth.
Because they have the web feet and all that?
Yeah, the physical traits of the squishers, maybe. Seems to be a reference. I mean, doesn't necessarily mean they actually are breeding with the squishers or have blood of them, but it's like some kind of reference to that.
Are the deep ones and the mermen like different or the same, or are they fighting each other? Or maybe not fighting, but like are they on opposing sides?
In Lovecraft, it's just the deep ones are a thing. I guess they all ancient people attributed things that were deep ones to the mythical creature mermaids, but they were always deep ones. And I think they're supposed to be children of Cthulhu or something. And of course, the Heart of Darkness, the guy, is a reference to Cthulhu's Corpse City. So that's going on too.
What about in A Song of Ice and Fire? Because there's specific references to mermen and Merlin King and all this other stuff,
Oh, yeah,
and then also deep ones. So is it a reference to the same thing?
I think it would be, but there's quite a bit of mermaid stuff going on. They could be separate things. I would think that they're probably the same thing.
I wonder if it's like a other and white relationship.
Well, there's the dead things in the water line that everyone always speculates about.
Yeah, I just always took that to mean like whites just like running into the water.
Yeah, it could mean all kinds of stuff. Could mean like a zombie kraken. It could mean they were attacked by deep ones. It could be all kinds of stuff.
A zombie kraken.
That'd be cool.
I mean, in the show, you
If
already have a dragon. That's the next best thing, right?
if it turns out that there was a zombie kraken at Hardhome, the show really messed up. Because that'd have been fucking cool. I mean, I'd probably pick on it like, oh yeah, this is so stupid, and then reading the book and be like, oh, I'm stupid. That'd be cool. Yeah, the deep sea stuff is, who knows? I guess nothing is done with that because we don't even know what's probably underneath there, down in the abyss. By the way, I watched. Oh yeah, I mentioned this in our group chat. Made in Abyss, great show, great anime.
Yeah, John told me to watch it, and then I told him about your experience with it, and he said, "Yeah, that makes sense." And he's like, but you should still watch it." And I was like, "Well, I don't want to get emotional. Why would I want to watch that?" And he's like, "No, there's other reasons you should watch it." But he looked like sadistical when he said that to me, and I was like, "What the fuck? Like, you want me to suffer?"
Well, I mean, any show that gives you like a strong emotional reaction is worth watching.
Eh,
But aside from that, like it is greatly animated. I
see.
don't know if you'd be able to appreciate it if you don't watch a whole lot of anime by itself, to where you can notice the difference. But it's really well made.
I used to when I was younger.
You should watch it as an adult. You can probably get more out of it.
Okay.
One
Brett,
more.
what's your take on anime?
Oh, I used to watch it a little bit. I haven't watched it in a long time. Actually, no, I did watch one that is like the funniest thing I've seen in years. I think it's called Konosuba or something.
Ah, yes, Konosuba's great.
Like a satire of RPGs and stuff. It's
That's
amazing.
hilarious. I love Konosuba. So yeah, watch Konosuba, guys, and Made in Abyss. Any more theories?
That's all I had.
I'm gonna say about Patchface, like I mentioned, my general idea on him is that his mind is broken by contact with something, and you made all those strong connections with his messages in Valyria. And there's a theory going around that the Stone Men in Valyria and the Shrouded Lord are like a hive mind. So if Patchface is similar to Hodor and Brain used the werewoods to mess up his mind, then maybe Patchface had contact with this hive mind thing with all the Stone Men in Valyria. Because it is in the same general region. Valyria's near the Free Cities, right past it.
Right.
Isn't it kind of in between Volantis and the Free Cities, or like the Stepstones? Or
What?
do I have the map wrong?
It's
Valeria.
Valeria's west of, or east of all that stuff.
yeah, it's right past Volantis.
Oh,
It's
okay.
between Atlantis and Slaver's Bay.
Okay.
It's a big reason or a big problem for Quentin and his company to figure out how they're going to get to Slaver's Bay from Volantis. All right, well, guys, I think that about wraps us up for the prologue. I think this was better the second time around than it was our first go.
We
Brett,
had a lot of
thanks
funny
for-
moments in the first one.
Oh yeah, we did miss out on I mean,
Power
we touched-
Rangers.
Yeah, the Power Rangers. We did touch up on Mel the anime girl. Power Rangers. Was there anything else that we?
I don't know. There were moments that I really liked in it.
Here that does anime art, please do Melisandre, the anime version for us.
That'd be great.
Also, Stan.
It's the whole thing. The whole thing needs to be made into an anime. Brett, thanks for hanging out with us again, and doing this for a second time.
Yeah, it was fun.
We got a lot of chapters in the next 4 books, so I'm sure we'll have you on quite a few times in the future.
Yeah, I'll definitely be back.
Lillian, do you got anything else to say?
We got Cat coming up next.
Yes. So, as we said before, our plan for A Clash of Kings is to do the POVs linear. So we're going to do all the Cat chapters, all the Brands and Danny's, and everybody else straight through. So we're going to have like the next, 10 episodes be Cat? Or something like that. And Cat probably got the more interesting chapters of this book anyway, being right in the thick of the War of the Five Kings and everything like that. So it should be fun. Check us out on SoundCloud, on YouTube. Guys, and if you're in the group and you're listening to this, subscribe, like, bump it up so other nerds can hear us, and hopefully we can lure them into the group and we can expand our little community out. So, thanks for listening, and we'll see you guys in the next one. See ya.
Thanks, guys.